Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Monday, May the 26th, 2025, and today's topic I'm going to call Stages of a Drawing. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer, and this is going to turn into a little bit of a series, so I'll link to yesterday's video if you want to follow along. If you would like to have more details about what's going on, I usually talk about a lot of different concepts that I find helpful to creating artwork. So in this case, I'm going to talk about stages of a drawing, and I intentionally didn't work on this. I usually want to, but yeah, I wanted to show like the different stages. So for example, this is like a sketch, and it's not a thumbnail because it's bigger than a thumbnail. But just for an example, a thumbnail of this, usually this would go in the other direction, which is the thumbnail comes first and then this. But I'll just do like a different, so yeah, there's more detail in yesterday's video, but let's say I had a scene like this, and instead of this view, maybe I wanted to do like a thumbnail and just kind of explore it. Maybe I would do like this kind of thing if I wanted to show if I wanted to work out like the shot or something, or like the composition. So maybe like this. And that's pretty much it. And then I might decide like the light and dark pattern. So I might decide that everything in the foreground would just be kind of dark, kind of like that. And that's sort of a simple, so you have like the dark right here, and then not quite as dark in the middle ground where the bridge is, and then just leave the like the background kind of open. I mean, that's just an example. You could do all sorts of different patterns, but that's what this was, to show you can rearrange the pattern. And that's like a thumbnail. And then you could have gone from that to basically what I did yesterday. You could skip that one. Part of that is because this is a sketchbook, so that's the whole point of it. You can just play around with some ideas, and this isn't like the best drawing I've ever done, but it's okay. Like, that's the whole point of a sketchbook. So there's going to be kind of a lot of talking at first because there's a lot of different sort of ideas that go into like the stages of drawing. So I would call this, for example, like a drawing, meaning it's done. Like, it could be done. Like, and that's kind of up to you, because you're also like the art director, at least depending on what kind of like project you're working on. In this case, I'm like the one deciding that it could be done. So that's why it's not a sketch, although it could be like a preliminary drawing for, let's say, like an illustration or like a painting or something. So the preliminary is its own kind of thing. Just like if I sketch something out, this is a preliminary for this, for something like this. This is to get this ready for a more detailed drawing. If you just wanted to draw something like out of your head and just kind of draw it, like, that's its own thing. And that's not what this is about. Like, that's kind of a, like, to me, like, that's sort of like a trick or a gimmick. And some of that will like show up, and I've done that also, but that's not really, for example, concept art or like a comic book or like a story or something like that. There's all these different purposes behind drawing the stages. So this is like a sketch, and before I start going in and detailing stuff, so that's kind of what I mean. Like, I could go in and just start detailing stuff and just make up stuff as I go along, and that's okay, but like, that's not what I'm wanting to do with this, because there's like other stuff that goes into it, and that's what this will be. We're wanting it to, I'm using this as kind of a guide, but I don't want it to look just like that. I want it to be a little bit more open so that I can color it. So that's like the other thing to think about, is if you're wanting to color something. So just to begin with, I'm going to put a border on this, and I'll fast forward through the, or maybe I'll just kind of talk for a second here. So one thing is, the way something looks finished, you have to kind of experiment with it, because you can have a finished drawing that looks sketchy, like a sketchy style, which is different than a sketch, because a finished drawing could look sketchy. And exactly what does that mean? The sketchiness comes from the looseness of it, but the finish of it, like the way something looks finished, comes from like the deliberateness of it. So if I put down just an example, if I just kind of like sort of not deliberately kind of like, you could doodle something. So I'm just gonna kind of doodle some stuff here, and that's like doodling, except that it's not quite doodling because I know that these are leaves. So doodling kind of implies sort of this kind of thing where I'm just like this, and then I'll start to see like some stuff. That's doodling. That's stuff that you can do, like I used to do that on the side of like homework. And that's where like doodling comes from. Here you can kind of do it like in a doodling kind of style. You can doodle in some shapes, but I know that these are leaves, so it's a little bit more than, so it becomes like a sketch. So I'm sketching out what these could look like. But the doodling aspect of it is because maybe like the mark making, like that's what I like, because leaves can look different. These leaves can look more angular. However, if it's like the same tree, they tend to look the same. Obviously, the leaves are going to kind of have the same shape. So if I'm going to go with this, I'm just going to go ahead and like go with that look. And then to know like what leaves look like, I'm just going to look up leaves like for reference. And you can also do studies. Like if you're just looking for something to sketch, you can just sketch some leaves. So let's just do that, for example. So I just doodled that in. That's the whole point of doodling. It's like I didn't think about it. Although I knew that they were leaves because of the sketch, because of like the layout sketch. And then over here, I'm going to make these look different just for interest. And because leaves look different like on different trees. So apparently this is kind of an ash tree. Like just from, I'm not some expert at leaves and stuff, but I like to draw them. So again, still sketching it. I wouldn't call this the detail. Part of this has to do with establishing the composition, which is like the scale of things. So these leaves will be kind of big, and this is sort of the shape that they have because of the reference. Like that's how I know. And of course you can also just go look, but I mean a big part of it for me is the imagination. I like using my imagination, but then I'm also using reference to kind of, again, for the storytelling aspect, I wanted to look interesting and I wanted to look convincing enough that you can see that they're leaves and accept that, okay, like that's the world that it exists in. Like that's the purpose behind it. So now that I've established kind of the scale of it, so that's like a perspective thing. If you draw these leaves kind of in this way, like design it in this way, it looks closer to us because of drawing, like picture making. So that's still like a sketch. That doesn't have like the light and shadow. Although if you just want to keep it like linear, like or outlined, then that is light and shadow, because wherever the black pen line is, then that's dark. That's the reason that it is dark, is because light is hitting it, and that's what the line work is for. So you could have done the line work in different ways. You could decide that this, kind of like this, like that's not outlined, and it looks a little bit further back. It looks less contrasty, or yeah, like less outlined, less defined. So for pen and ink, that's kind of a way to get edges. So that's just an example. That's not a lot of like light and dark. I kind of did this, because sometimes you can start to put in the light and dark. But even now, like, I can go in different directions with this. If I were going to color it, I wouldn't necessarily do all of this, because I mean, I could. It's just the amount of work. Like, you don't need to do that. So I found like a stone bridge, for example, and it doesn't look like this. And I saw a picture where the person's on the bridge, and that's about correct. So that's kind of how that works. But just to go back to like the idea of the different stages. So this is still a sketch. And depending on how much detail you want, like back here, you'd be surprised how you could get away with this, for example. So you're kind of looking, it's like a top-down view. So a lot of this could just be like that, like open. And if it's color, that could just be a, like, yeah, color, like a gradation or something. But like right here, this is probably the most developed part, because it starts to have some light and shadow. So I found a picture where I can get some ideas. It's not exactly like this, but I can see that like underneath here, there's shadow. Depending on how practiced you are with sketching, and that's why I encourage sketching all the time, sometimes your hand will create stuff that you don't have to redraw, like the drawing is already there. And so what I mean is, like right here, like the drawing is already right there. Like, I don't have to like draw a lot of that. And as far as like the light and dark, that's kind of up to you. And that depends on like the tool that you're using, or like the medium that you're using. So I'm using pen and ink with a medium point felt tip. That could help. It's just to stick with like one thing so that you can see like what the effect of it is. Because it's not about like the right way to do it. It's about like what is the effect that you're going for. So just an example. I'm going to go in and just do this. So this is like cross hatching. Now I could decide, okay, well, I'm just going to fill that in, but I'm not going to do that. That's why I always say to like build it up gradually, because with pen and ink, it's like if you go too far with it, then you have to make everything like based off of it. So if I make that like too dark, then I have to, because everything is like relative. That's the thing. So that's what I mean by like build it up gradually. So what's happening is that part of this is that I'm sketching in like the foliage, like the grass and bushes and rocks and stuff, but I'm keeping in mind the light and dark. So I'm starting to go towards a light and dark pattern, because that may be it right there. Like, you don't, like, you could put color over this, you could scan this in. So just kind of glancing at the reference, I'm just going to go off of what I already have, like right here. Like, I kind of have something right here, so I could sketch in something. Now if I had done this in pencil, maybe I would have just, you could outline something. I mean, there's just different ways of going about it. You could decide to start to sketch in the, like the dark areas. So like if I go like this, this gives me some kind of like room to go in a different kind of direction. And what I mean by that is I might want to like outline certain things. A lot of this is you just kind of experiment with it. That's what a sketchbook is for, to just kind of see. Like the other day I did a bold outline style exploration, as I call it. Some of it is just kind of based on like the mood, and some of it is based on like the, let's say this was a comic, I might just stick with like kind of the same approach. So you'll notice that this is from the sketch right here, like that's the sketch. And then I'm going to do a light and dark, just kind of glancing at the way these bridges look. I'm going to start to do like the light and dark pattern. So like that's the light and then that's the dark. And everything that's on the, like the dark side, so to speak, the shadow side of it, is going to be a little bit like darker, but it could be like this. And that's sort of a style thing where you leave that open. You don't have to like draw all of that. And that's kind of what I mean about just build it up like gradually. So it's still the sketch, but it's going towards light and dark. Part of the light and dark, that's kind of your ability. That's the beauty of sort of drawing, is that you can just make up stuff because you want it to be that way. So for example, if I want this to be darker, that's just a choice that I'm making. Same with this. Let's say that because I think like I like the eye flow, and that's what I mean by build it up gradually. Like maybe the pattern, I like this, like it leads the eye into this. And that's what the sketchy aspect of it is. I'm just going to sketch it in. And if I were using paint, I wouldn't crosshatch. I would just kind of paint, but you would have to decide like what color that is and stuff. So you want to be able to, I mean, if I'm drawing a comic, it's mostly going to be kind of like this look anyway. So that's just kind of an example. Like I can just make up like the pattern just because I want it to look like that. That's like that's kind of the whole point. And I might just leave that like open because that's part of the lighting, but it's also part of the material of the clothing. So that's going from sketch to the light and dark. So notice that the sketch, you have a lot of control because you can just sketch that in, and you decided like the picture, you decided that these are leaves, and like leaves on a tree or like grass. So you decided that, and then you decided that like there's these people. So that's like the power of like drawing. Then I kind of looked up reference just to kind of get an idea. If it needs to look exactly like the reference, then you just draw it like the reference. But if it just kind of needs to look a little bit like it, then you can just, for example, leaves can just kind of look like this. And that's just from looking at reference or looking at like life. If you can, I mean, you're probably not going to see leaves from this angle. And then the light and dark, you have the control because you get to control like the eye flow, like the contrast. Like the dark kind of leads the eye. Like the dark areas like this is sort of like the bass line or like the rhythm of like if it's a song, because it grounds everything. And it leads the eye. And then like the light areas is kind of like the melody part of it. I mean, there's some things like you might just want to leave, just again, like that's just for the eye flow because that attracts the eye. That's kind of a whole nother topic. That's composition, which is closer to design. So it's good to study design. So that's like light and dark. So going from the sketch to now you start to have like more of a light and dark pattern. Reference helps with that because then you can kind of get an idea of like there's sort of like basic stuff like this could just be dark, but then when you look at nature, there's a lot of little nuances and stuff. One thing is I do like to, whatever it is I'm working on, I like to sort of build it up like at the same pace just for my own sake. So like for a picture like this, if one little area is like really detailed, it just seems like a lot more work to like make the rest of it like that. However, if I just kind of do it in these stages, it's more interesting for like, I want to keep working on it. It's more motivating. And then also later, even if I just left it at this, it's more informative. Or I might want to go in and like work on the next part. So the next part, for example, would be like the detail part. So what do I mean by that? So the detail part is like right here. So that you have a sketch and then you have the light and the dark. So you have light coming here and like the dark, like the shading, if you want to call it that. Like it's pretty much done. In other words, like this is a sketch that is a sketch, like it's done. as a sketch, as a preliminary for like the detail. Or like if it's going to be a painting, like this is enough information to like paint something pretty detailed. Then the next thing is, part of it is like studying, so that's what reference is, or like, yeah, studying like the actual thing. Then you start to see like how this thing was built and how like, yeah, like people like made it. Then after that, to make something look detailed, so not everything needs to be outlined. It just depends on how you, that's kind of like its own thing, like how to render something. So for just an example, you can go back in and do this. And why is this making it look more finished? One, it's because the shapes are more definite. And if you have a thicker line, again, this is because it's pen and ink, but if you have a thicker line, then it's more defined, but you don't have to necessarily outline everything. Some areas could be more outlined, and that's more of a composition thing, or you could just outline everything. That's a style kind of thing. I'm just kind of breaking down the steps, but a lot of times it's intuitive after a while. so like this, like there's nothing that says that you have to do this particular kind of thing, and you may not want to like go overboard with that if you're going to color it. It's just, these are just some like thoughts. And yeah, a lot of it is like the style of it. Part of it is like it's already drawn. So like this right here, for example, is pretty sketchy, but like it's a good drawing, meaning like the shape of it, like just like the look of it is good, but it's sketchy. It's a sketch. And to make it look more defined, you could decide like that's just using the line weight. And I don't like to outline everything just because of the way I do the way I think about like light and dark and like reflected light and stuff. It looks more cartoony if you outline everything, which is good for if you're doing a cartoon. So that's how something looks more detailed, more finished. Also, the other thing is if something has smaller shapes. So let's say I have like this area right here. I add smaller shapes. When I was doing 3D modeling, which I used to do a long time ago, you could say that this is like the form, like the primitive form, but like you're subdividing it. So you see, like I could shade that, but I won't, like right now, because of the eye flow. It's not because it would be wrong, it's because it's like the eye flow of it. So that's kind of what I mean. You could shade that part. It's up to you. You might leave it open to color it, because maybe it's the color that'll do it. The other thing that makes, so smaller shapes make something look, so that's what I mean. Like I didn't redraw this, but these smaller like shadow shapes right here, it makes it look more detailed, because the reason that they're small shapes is because you have small forms. And the reason you can see, so over here, there's also small forms, but it's just so far away that it looks like this. Like you don't see the detail. That's literally like the saying, like you don't see the detail there, but like you see the detail here. So your drawing is, the way you draw it is sort of like the camera lens. It lends itself. The decision to like shade this or not is up to you. Let me just do it like just to do it. But notice like when I did that, it makes it look detailed because there's contrast and like small shapes and stuff. Same with this, like it's all part of the eye flow. And that's why, like, I think the detailing is great. Like I think it's pretty fun, but it's built upon, like, it's on top of like the structure of the sketch. So the shape is the drawing. So this is just one way to approach this. part of this is just like, yeah, like, because I've been sketching in this way, and so this just seems fun. Like, it seems interesting to me to do it this way. So the whole thing of like reflected light and everything, like that's happening in here. But you can eyeball it kind of the way that I did that with the perspective. I sort of eyeballed it. But it's the same with like the lighting. If you kind of understand the basic principles of it, you can use it as like a tool or like as a trick. Because this is all just a trick because it's a 2D surface, but you're making it look like it's sculpted or 3D. And it doesn't have to be 3D. It could also be flat shapes. An example of like a flat shape could just be like right here. You can just use shapes. Like some of this could just be color. It's up to you. So for example, like I had established that these are the shape of the leaves. I might just do this and just leave it at a flat shape. And using perspective, which is smaller shapes, which is also a design thing, it looks like a certain thing, and that's like the communication part of it. That's the language of it, or like the vocabulary of it. And you don't have to like shade that at all. You could just leave it as a shape. So I didn't know what these characters were going to look like. I'm just going to go off of the sketch, because that's the whole point of a sketch, is to discover like the characters and stuff. If you outline something, it'll look more detailed, it'll look more defined. Kind of same with this. I could outline this, or I could use this to make the edge look softer so that it doesn't attract the eye as much. If I outline it, then it has more of a focus. To decide like the size of these marks, it's a perspective thing. So the smaller ones look further away, but also the more you have these small shapes, because these are basically shapes, the more detailed it looks. It looks like something, versus here there's nothing there. So that's a lot of information. It's part of how you detail. Maybe to kind of wrap this up, so you can see that there's just levels of detail. So like this could just always be like that until the end of the picture. Kind of the same with this. Like it still looks sketchy. So how do you like not make it look as sketchy? Like how do you start to, you'll notice that here it's starting to look a little bit more detailed. So with these ones, they're kind of like, I guess, elms in the reference that I found. Like I just looked up leaves, and the elm ones have like more of the jaggedy edges. So I'm not going to like redraw this. Like it's already been drawn, and I'm going to just outline it. With these jaggedy shapes. And I could just do like the whole thing like that. And that's an artistic choice. Like that's not trying to say that it's correct to outline something. It's an artistic decision. But by outlining it, you'll notice like it stands out. Like it looks closer. Like that's one thing. So I'm just defining the shape, but I'm not redrawing it, because the drawing is like this. That's the drawing right there. This is like the rendering of it. And let's say that there's smaller leaves in there. I can just do this. And that makes it not outlined, that makes it like have a softer edge. And again, that's just based on, part of it is it saves time obviously, but like it's also a decision because it leads the eye a certain way. So that's building it up gradually. Not all of it needs to look like that, but notice that it does lead the eye, like that's there. And then over here, the same thing with like if you like have these dark areas, kind of like this, it's going to look more interesting, like it's going, or not interesting, but like focused, like focal point. But then notice that having it be like this, which is more outlined, also attracts the eye because of like this empty space right there. And then some areas, even like the line width can determine certain things. So if I like this one, so it's kind of like this, like I might decide to do this. Again, this is just an artistic choice. It's not that this is correct. Nothing says that I have to do it this way, but it's like it's like a style exploration. That's what the sketchbook is for. It's a lot of information, but hopefully that was helpful. That'll be it for today. I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.